Night has settled in, and the room is left with only a gentle light from a small corner, just enough for everything to appear soft, as if breathing slowly. Outside, time passes almost without sound, like a dark current of water moving quietly by, something we notice only when we pause for a long while. Allow your shoulders to loosen a little more, let your breathing deepen, and step into this moment of rest as though entering a quiet corridor. Tonight, we are not searching for answers. We simply listen to the questions that science still leaves open. From distant stars, to dreams within sleep, to the familiar mysteries that exist within our own bodies. Here, science is neither hurried nor loud. It is like a story told slowly, slow enough for you to think, or simply to close your eyes. A place to pause where curiosity and sleep can exist together, gently beginning. The ultimate mystery of existence, cosmic origins. There are moments very late at night, when every sound seems to have withdrawn from the world, that we suddenly become more aware of our own presence than usual. One breath moving in, one breath moving out. The space around us feels wider, as though the room itself has stepped back a little to make room for stillness. And within that quiet, an ancient question sometimes appears softly, without noise, without demanding an immediate answer. Why is there all of this? Why is there light, matter, and the thoughts passing through our minds instead of complete emptiness? Science has traveled very far in understanding the world after it began. We can measure the ages of stars, listen to the faint echoes left behind from the earliest era of the universe, and see galaxies so distant that their light has taken billions of years to reach human eyes. Yet when we return to the first moment, where every story seems to begin, we find ourselves standing before a half-closed door. We know the universe was once small, blazing hot, dense like a point of light, compressed beyond imagination. People call it the Big Bang, as though a great explosion opened space and time. But in truth, no one heard any sound. There was no sky to vibrate, no emptiness through which sound could travel, only the quiet unfolding of reality itself. Perhaps time itself was born in that moment. If so, the question, what came before, becomes like asking what lies north of the North Pole. When the universe's own clock first began to move, the ideas of before and after were only just coming into existence. It may sound unfamiliar, yet sometimes it brings a strange sense of relief. Not every question needs to travel endlessly backward. There are places where imagination can only pause, like a shoreline where the ocean meets the land. In those first moments, the universe is believed to have expanded at an almost unimaginable speed. It was not galaxies flying away from one another, but space itself stretching between them, like a piece of fabric being drawn outward in silence. This phenomenon is called inflation, a sudden swelling that occurred in a span shorter than even an imagined blink. But what caused it to begin? And why did it stop at just the right moment for stars to later form? These questions remain resting within the laboratories of human thought, still without complete answers. Sometimes physicists consider that what we call nothing may not be entirely empty. Even the deepest vacuum trembles faintly, where tiny particles appear and disappear too quickly for anyone to hold on to. Perhaps the universe itself is a vibration like that, a fluctuation large enough not to vanish again. But if so, why are there laws that allow it to exist? Why is there mathematics, structure, invisible paths that planets and light continue to follow? When we look up at the night sky, we often feel that time moves forward, A glass falls and shatters, yet the fragments do not gather themselves back into wholeness. Hot coffee cools slowly, but never warms again on its own. Everything seems to move in one direction. We call this the flow of time. Yet at the deepest level of physics, many equations do not distinguish between past and future. They remain true whether read forward or reversed. So what causes our lives to move only ahead? A gentle explanation lies in the idea of order and disorder. The universe today is filled with mixture, collision, and random motion. Yet in the beginning, it seems to have been remarkably tidy, almost perfect. A rare state of order, difficult to understand. From that neatness, time could begin to flow, like a stone starting to roll downhill after being placed at a height. But why the universe began at that high point, instead of within chaos from the start, is still something no one fully understands. Perhaps the strangest thing of all is that we are here to think about these matters at all. Atoms once born inside ancient stars have become bodies that breathe, that ask questions, that listen. The universe does not merely exist. It has produced beings quiet enough to wonder about its own existence. And when seen this way, the greatest question no longer feels heavy. It is like a distant star, something that does not need to be reached. Simply seeing it is enough. Perhaps we will never know why there is something instead of nothing. Yet within that not knowing, there is a very gentle pause. A place where the mind can loosen its hold, like the night sky that asks for no explanation in order to be beautiful. If you notice, your breathing by now may have slowed a little. Time is still moving, quietly, from the earliest beginning of the universe to this very moment. And somewhere among the unanswered questions, a feeling of calm begins to open, as though the journey has only just begun. The invisible universe. Dark universe. Perhaps when one question has finally settled within the mind, another arrives gently, like one wave following another across the surface of a night sea. If the existence of the universe itself is something that makes us pause for a long while in thought, then what comes next is sometimes even quieter. Most of what exists around us has never truly been seen, not because it lies too far away, but because it does not shine, does not reflect, and leaves behind none of the familiar traces for human eyes to follow. When astronomers observe galaxies turning slowly in the darkness, they notice something deeply strange. The stars at the outer edges move far faster than the gravity of visible matter should be able to hold them. By every prediction, they should have drifted away long ago, quietly leaving the embrace of their galaxies. Yet they remain, circling like leaves held within an invisible current of water. As though a gentle hand, without light and without form, is keeping everything together. We call it dark matter. A name that sounds certain, yet is really only a way of saying that we do not know what it is. It does not absorb light, emit light, or reflect light. The largest telescopes see only emptiness where it is present. And yet this unseen substance outweighs many times over every planet, every star, every living body we have ever known. Perhaps even now, as you lie still with your eyes closed, billions of particles of dark matter are passing through the room, through the earth, even through our own bodies, quietly like wind moving through a forest. No one feels them. No one hears their footsteps. Laboratories deep beneath mountains continue to wait patiently for a tiny collision, a fragile signal enough to reveal how they truly exist. But for now, the silence continues. And if that is not enough to invite humility, the sky holds another secret, gentler in feeling yet far greater in scale. When scientists first looked toward distant stars, they believed gravity would gradually slow the universe over time, like a ball thrown upward that eventually comes to rest. But the light from ancient stellar explosions tells another story. Space is not slowing down. It is expanding faster. Between galaxies, something is pushing them apart. Not wind, not familiar matter. A form of energy that seems to reside within emptiness itself. It is called dark energy, though the name feels more like a confession than an explanation. We know it exists because galaxies are moving away from one another ever more quickly, like boats drifting toward open sea with no one rowing. Strangely, this invisible presence makes up most of the universe. Stars, planets, oceans, and human bodies are only a thin layer upon the surface of reality. Everything else belongs to what we do not yet understand. At times, that feeling is not as frightening as one might imagine. It is like walking into a vast forest at night, aware that many things are present even when they cannot all be seen. And within that vastness comes a quiet reassurance, as though the world will never run out of things to discover. The fundamental numbers of nature whisper another secret. Gravity is just strong enough for stars to burn for billions of years without collapsing too soon. The electric charge of the electron is balanced precisely enough for atoms to bind into molecules. If those values were only slightly different, there might be no steady light, no water, no thoughts passing through the human mind at this moment. The universe seems delicately balanced, like an instrument tuned perfectly before the music begins. Some believe this is only coincidence. Others imagine countless other universes, each with different laws, and that we simply live in the rare one suited for life. The idea opens into an image so vast it is almost impossible to hold. Bubbles of universes drifting within an endless ocean, each carrying its own way of existing. Yet no light from them can reach us. No signal can cross such distance. Even the part of the universe we can see is only a small island. Light requires time to travel through space, and because the universe has an age, there are places whose light has never had enough time to arrive. Beyond that horizon, reality continues. Quiet as an ocean lying beyond the sight of someone standing on the shore. Perhaps there are galaxies there, much like our own, or perhaps something entirely different. We do not know, and perhaps we never will. Yet strangely, that limitation carries a deeply human feeling. Like looking through a window at night, knowing the city stretches far beyond the lights before us, even when we cannot see every street. Not every darkness needs to be illuminated at once. If you listen very slowly, you may begin to sense the quietness hidden within all of this. The universe does not require us to understand it completely in order to be here. Its mysteries are not walls, but something more like the night sky, open, deep, and gentle enough that we need only lie down, look upward, and allow ourselves to rest among the unknown. Quantum reality and space-time. Quantum reality. And once we grow accustomed to the thought that most of the universe exists in silence, beyond the reach of our sight, another question gently opens, like eyes slowly adjusting to darkness and beginning to recognize shapes never noticed before. If matter can be invisible, if energy can hide within emptiness itself, then perhaps even the stage upon which everything unfolds is not as simple as we imagine. Space and time, the two things that seem most solid, may themselves be only soft surfaces of something deeper. In everyday life, space feels like a stable room where every object has a clear position. Time resembles a river flowing steadily, carrying morning into evening, youth into old age. But when physicists look deeply enough, they discover that space and time are not unmoving containers. They bend around stars, stretch near massive objects, and move more slowly or more quickly, depending on where one stands. A clock placed on a mountain peak truly runs differently from one at sea level. The difference is too small for us to notice, yet it is always there, like the faint breathing of the universe. And then, at distances smaller than atoms themselves, the world changes once more. Tiny particles do not remain in fixed places like pebbles resting on the ground. They exist as possibilities unfolding. An electron may be present in many locations at once, not because it divides into separate parts, but because reality at that level seems to allow many paths to exist side by side. Only when we measure, when light touches it, when information becomes clear, does one possibility quietly become real. The idea may sound unfamiliar, yet at times it resembles the choices within a human life. Before a decision is made, many directions exist together in the mind. Only when a step is taken does the path become singular. In the quantum world, the universe itself seems to hold such hesitation, a gentle moment before things take form. There are particles that once stood beside one another and were then separated by millions of kilometers. Even farther still. Yet they continue to share a strange connection. When one changes, the other appears to know immediately, regardless of distance. No signal moves through space that we can measure. No physical thread binds them together. And yet the harmony remains, like two instruments resonating with the same note even when placed in separate rooms. Perhaps this suggests that distance does not always mean what we believe it does. That, at a deeper layer, the universe may be woven together in a way where space is no longer a barrier, an invisible fabric in which every point remains quietly connected. Yet at that moment, a gentle tension appears within human understanding. The laws that describe the very small function perfectly in their own way. The laws that describe planets, stars, and galaxies are no less precise. Each system is correct within its own domain. But when we try to place them side by side, especially in extreme places such as the earliest moments of the universe, or deep within the heaviest objects, the equations begin to tangle. Numbers stretch toward infinity, as though our language no longer has enough words to continue the story. Nowhere is that limitation clearer than within the dark regions we call black holes. From afar, they appear only as places where light cannot return. A star that drifts too close will be stretched, twisted, and disappear beyond an invisible horizon. Yet what happens inside remains a mystery. The equations say that everything is compressed into a point of infinite density, where space and time themselves seem to stop. We call this a singularity, though the name feels more like an admission that we have reached the edge of understanding. What troubles many thinkers is not only that matter disappears, but that information might as well. In physics, information about an object, its position, its state, its history, is not supposed to vanish completely. If a book falls into a black hole, where do the stories inside it go? Do they truly disappear forever? Or are they preserved in some way we do not yet understand? There is a gentle idea suggesting that black holes are not entirely silent. At their edges, quantum fluctuations may create a faint radiation, so slow that it would take longer than the lifetimes of stars to notice. Given enough time, a black hole may fade away like mist beneath early sunlight. But if it disappears, where will the story of what once fell into it be told? These questions remain, like letters still unopened. Some equations even suggest that black holes could be doors, tunnels linking distant regions of space. No one knows whether they truly exist. Perhaps anyone attempting to enter would be crushed long before reaching another place. Yet the thought that the universe might fold itself, connecting immense distances through shorter paths, carries a quiet beauty, like secret shortcuts hidden within an ancient garden. And then, as all of this settles, a very gentle possibility begins to appear. Perhaps reality is not as rigid as the table beneath our hands. Perhaps it resembles a story being written moment by moment, where possibility and choice weave together. Space may emerge from information. Time may simply be the way the mind arranges memory. Yet even as such thoughts pass through us, the room remains quiet. Breathing continues in an even rhythm. And the most important thing is not to understand every mystery. The universe does not require us to solve every equation before allowing us to rest within it. Sometimes, simply knowing that reality is deeper than what we see is already enough. Like the night sky, we do not need to touch every star. We may simply lie beneath their light, allowing the mind to drift gently among the unknown. Astronomical mysteries and the structure of the universe. Cosmic evolution. And then, after all these reflections on the hidden nature of reality, on particles that may exist in many places at once, and on dark regions where time itself seems to pause, the mind may gently return to a more familiar question. If the universe unfolded from a distant first moment, if space once expanded in silence like the first breath of existence, then what happened afterward? How did a sea of simple burning energy become the sky filled with stars that we see today? There may once have been a long age when the universe was completely dark. Not the darkness of night as we know it, where city lights or a thin moon still remain. It was a primordial darkness, when light had nowhere yet to be born. Only faint clouds of gas drifted slowly, mostly hydrogen and helium, spreading through space as it gradually cooled. If we could have stood there, there would have been nothing to see, only an almost absolute stillness. Then somewhere, regions of gas slightly denser than others began to collapse under their own weight. There was no sound to announce it, no sudden burst of brilliance, only a slow gathering, patient as dew forming upon grass at night. When pressure grew strong enough, the first light appeared. The earliest stars ignited within the young universe, far larger and hotter than the sun we know. They lived quickly, burned fiercely, and vanished within only a few million years, a brief blink within cosmic time. Yet those brief moments changed everything. Within their cores, heavy elements were created for the first time. Carbon, oxygen, iron, the materials that would later become stone, water, and even life itself. When these stars ended their lives in quiet explosions across the emptiness, they scattered their substance everywhere, like gardeners sowing seeds into soil never before touched. Not long after, larger structures began to form. Galaxies turned slowly, gathering stars into gentle sweeping curves. Many took on spiral shapes, long arms bending like water caught in motion. Why they form this way is still not fully understood. Perhaps it is a delicate balance between gravity and motion, like the swirling patterns that appear when one stirs a cup of tea. Strangely, those spiral arms are not fixed objects. Stars pass through them like travelers moving through a crowd that gathers and disperses. At the centers of many galaxies, immense masses appeared very early. Black holes millions or even billions of times heavier than the Sun seem to have grown far too quickly for what we once believed possible. They were already present when the universe was young, like ancient trees rising after only a single season of rain. No one is certain how they formed. Perhaps enormous clouds of gas collapsed directly inward. Perhaps the first stars left behind seeds larger than expected. However it happened, they remain there, silent at the hearts of galaxies, holding rings of stars in motion like leaves circling a deep current. Sometimes, from very far away, the universe sends brief signals. A flash of radio waves appears and disappears within a fraction of a second. Its energy is so immense that the Sun would need an entire year to release the same amount. Yet it passes as quickly as a blink. These calls come from distant galaxies, stretched across billions of light years before reaching antennas on Earth. We hear them, we measure them, yet we still are not certain what creates them. Perhaps neutron stars with intense magnetic fields, perhaps rare collisions hidden within darkness. There are remnants of stars spinning at astonishing speeds. They send out beams of light with steady precision, repeating like a heartbeat. Some keep time more accurately than humanity's atomic clocks. Occasionally, they suddenly change their rate of rotation, as though a strange ocean within them has shifted. Farther still, there exist neutron stars, whose magnetic fields are so strong that if one stood close enough, the structure of matter itself would be distorted. They release bursts of energy that we can observe only from the safe distance of many galaxies. Even Earth is not entirely separate from these stories. High-energy particles from space constantly fall into the atmosphere, carrying forces beyond any accelerator humans have ever built. Where they come from remains an open question, because magnetic fields throughout the galaxy bend their paths, erasing the traces of their journeys. Amid all of this, the universe is not a crowded place. There are enormous voids so vast that light requires hundreds of millions of years to cross them. Regions almost entirely without galaxies, like pauses between musical phrases. Why they are so large remains unclear. Yet when light passes through them, it changes ever so slightly, like a whisper hinting at the deeper structure of space. And then, if we look far enough ahead, another question appears, gentle as mist. Where will all these movements lead? If space continues to expand, galaxies may drift so far apart that the skies of future civilizations will grow empty. Stars may fade away, heat spreading everywhere until everything cools. Or perhaps something else awaits, a new cycle we do not yet understand. Perhaps the answer lies in that first moment when the universe expanded at unimaginable speed. What began that expansion? What caused it to stop at just the right time? The traces remain written within ancient light, yet their meaning is still not fully clear. And when we think of all this, we begin to see that the universe did not grow amid noise or urgency. It matured slowly across billions of years, like a garden widening without haste or careful tending. Stars are born and fade away. Galaxies turn gently within darkness. Passing signals cross the emptiness like distant greetings. Within that long evolution, our own existence is only a very small moment. Yet just as light from a distant star can still reach eyes slowly closing in the night, simply being here is already enough. And somewhere, between the rhythm of quiet breathing and a sky that continues to widen, the story of the universe goes on, gently, as though it has always had enough time to wait for us to rest. The origin of life and beyond Earth, life and astrobiology. And while galaxies continue to turn slowly within the darkness, while light from ancient stars carries on its journey across immense distances, something else is also unfolding much closer to us. No longer on the scale of millions of light years, but in places so small they are difficult to imagine. Within cooled stardust, within grains of rock circling young stars, matter began searching for a new way to exist. Perhaps that journey began very quietly. On a still hot planet, where the sky was often torn open by lightning and falling meteorites, water condensed into the first oceans. Vapor fell as rain for millions of years, filling the deep basins on the young surface of Earth. As temperatures softened, the oceans became dark mirrors, reflecting a sky not yet watched by living eyes. Within those waters, simple molecules drifted together. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. Elements once forged inside distant stars now met again. There was no purpose, no intention. Only small collisions repeated countless times, like waves touching the shore and retreating once more. Some imagine that life began deep beneath the ocean, where fractures in Earth's crust released mineral-rich hot water. There, sunlight never arrived, yet energy continued to flow upward from within the planet. Small chambers in stone became natural shelters, holding molecules together long enough for them to attempt new combinations. Like empty rooms in a city without inhabitants, waiting for something to happen. Others picture shallow pools upon land, where water evaporated and returned in cycles. When the water withdrew, molecules were held closer together. When rain returned, they drifted freely again. Those repeating cycles may have helped form longer, more complex chains, as though nature patiently experimented millions of times without any hurry. Whether in the depths of the sea or beneath an ancient sun, the most remarkable moment may have been when matter began to copy itself. Somewhere, a fragile and accidental chain of molecules learned to create a copy of its own structure. Not because it knew how, simply because its form allowed it to happen. From that moment, time carried a different meaning. Things able to replicate endured longer. Those that could not slowly disappeared. Perhaps before DNA emerged, a simpler kind of molecule carried that role. Yet somewhere in deep history, DNA, with its familiar double helix, became the keeper of life's memory. Two strands winding gently around one another like parallel currents of water, holding information through tiny paired symbols. All forests, oceans, and even human thoughts that came later were written in that quiet language. What is striking is how similar that structure remains across nearly every living thing on Earth. A leaf, a fish, a human being, all read from the same alphabet. Why nature chose this particular form is still not completely clear. Perhaps it is the most stable solution, or perhaps it was simply the first successful attempt, continuing forward ever since. At the edge of life are entities that blur the boundary itself. Viruses do not truly live when alone. They require other cells in order to multiply, like wandering fragments of memory searching for shelter. Some believe they are remnants from a time before complete cells existed. Others think they were once fragments that escaped from living organisms and learned to persist on their own. Whatever their origin, they have accompanied life for billions of years, quietly shaping evolution in ways rarely noticed. What causes many people to pause is the question of why only a very small portion of chemistry became biology. The young Earth contained countless molecules. Yet only a few crossed the fragile boundary between the lifeless and the living. Was that outcome inevitable? Like seeds sprouting when given enough water and light? Or was it an exceedingly rare accident, happening once and then continuing ever after? That question lifts our gaze back toward the sky. If life could begin here, might it also have begun elsewhere? Our galaxy holds hundreds of billions of stars. Many carry rocky planets orbiting at distances gentle enough for liquid water to exist. Telescopes have already glimpsed such worlds, small and distant, circling within the soft light of their own suns. Some planets may hold oceans beneath pale violet skies. Others may receive weaker light, yet remain stable for billions of years. There are icy moons hiding oceans beneath thick shells, where water is warmed by the pull of a parent planet. Within that darkness, chemistry may still be continuing its story. And perhaps life does not need to resemble us at all. On Earth, water and carbon became familiar foundations. Elsewhere, other forms of chemistry may be exploring different paths. Oceans of cold methane, solvents unlike water, structures not based on DNA, yet still capable of preserving memory in their own way. All these possibilities do not carry a feeling of loneliness. Instead, they open into a wide gentleness, that life may not be rare at all, or perhaps it is very rare, and therefore all the more precious. At this very moment, within your resting body, trillions of cells are quietly rereading ancient lines written in DNA. Atoms that once burned within the earliest stars have become heartbeat, breath, and dreams. The universe has traveled a long distance from its first light to this awareness. And when we think of this, the distance between galaxy and body seems to shorten. No longer a story about distant places, but one continuing within us. A journey from stardust to life, unfolding slowly enough that we may lie still, listen, and allow ourselves to drift gently along with it, as though the entire universe, too, is learning how to breathe slowly through the night. The brain and human experience, mind and consciousness. And then, after the long journey through the stars, through ancient oceans where molecules first learned how to copy themselves, the story no longer seems to remain out there. It returns closer, very close. Not within a galaxy, nor beneath the ice of a distant moon, but here, where you are listening at this moment. Because perhaps the most remarkable thing the universe has ever created is not a star or a planet, but the ability to become aware of its own existence. Within the human brain, billions of neurons exchange signals through tiny flashes of electricity, lighter even than an imagined lightning strike. They connect into dense networks, like the map of a city seen from above at night. Lights turn on and fade again, endlessly without rest. Science can measure these movements, can see which regions glow when we hear music or recognize a familiar face. Yet within those streams of signals, something else quietly appears. The feeling of being here. No one truly knows why physical signals become inner experience, why the red of a sunset is not only a wavelength of light, but also carries warmth. Why a melody can make the chest feel lighter or heavier. Consciousness seems to be the place where matter gains its own story, as though the universe has suddenly found a voice with which to whisper to itself. When night arrives, that voice does not fall completely silent. In sleep, while the body lies still, the mind continues weaving other worlds. Familiar streets may appear within cities that never existed. People once known long ago return with faces clearer than daytime memory. Dreams resemble a river flowing through unmapped land. Some believe they help organize memory. Others think they soften emotions not yet fully understood. And sometimes, they may simply be the brain's free creativity when it no longer needs to maintain the order of daylight. What is curious is that within dreams, time no longer feels ordinary. A long conversation may unfold within only a few minutes of sleep. A moment of falling can seem endless before awakening arrives. Even while awake, time does not pass the same for everyone. An hour spent waiting may stretch like a winter afternoon, while a joyful day slips by like light moving across water. The clock on the wall does not change, yet our experience does. Memory carries a similar softness. We often imagine the past stored like books arranged upon a shelf. Yet each time we remember, the story is rewritten slightly. An unexpected scent can open an entire forgotten summer. An old song can change the light within a room. The brain does not merely store memories, it relives them, like a storyteller gently revising the tale according to present feeling. And emotions, they arrive far more quickly than reason. The heart races in fear before we understand what is happening. A smile appears before we find a reason for joy. Deep regions of the brain and body join together in that harmony. Hormones, heartbeat, breath all shift together. Emotion does not seem confined to the mind alone, but spreads through the body, like ripples across a lake when a leaf touches the surface. At times, new ideas appear in ways no one expects. An answer arrives while walking, bathing, or just before sleep. Many call this creativity, yet its origin remains as unclear as morning mist. The brain may quietly connect old memories in new ways until a small light turns on. That moment is often very quiet, not the sound of an explosion of discovery, but more like realizing a path had been there all along. Sometimes we enter a place and feel we have been there before. A passing familiarity appears even when we know it is the first visit. Déjà vu arrives and disappears as quickly as a blink. Perhaps it is only a small difference in how the brain processes information. Yet in that moment, present and memory seem to overlap, making time feel soft like water. Belief carries its own quiet strength. A pill without active medicine can still ease pain if the person taking it believes it will help. The body responds to expectation, releasing healing chemicals from within. This does not mean illness disappears through thought alone, but it shows that mind and body are never truly separate. They speak with one another constantly, even when we rarely hear the conversation. And then there is sleep. Each night we release control and enter our most fragile state. In nature, sleep might seem dangerous. A sleeping creature cannot flee or keep watch. Yet nearly every species requires it. The brain appears to use that time to clean, repair, and rebalance connections stretched through the long day. Like a city dimming its lights, so workers may quietly mend the roads while everyone rests. Some creatures sleep with only half their brain at a time. Others are able to fly while sleeping. It reminds us that sleep does not have a single form. Yet without it, the mind soon becomes unsettled. Thought slows. Emotion grows fragile, as though sleep were a necessary tide returning order to the shore. And now, as the body gradually grows quieter, you may notice that the greatest mystery no longer lies among distant galaxies. It rests just behind half-closed eyes, within thoughts drifting gently past. Consciousness is listening to its own story, one part of the universe observing another. There is no need to understand exactly how this happens. The night sky does not require us to know the name of every star in order to feel its beauty. It is enough simply to be here, within slow breathing, allowing the mind to soften, letting questions drift away like clouds. Because sometimes the deepest mystery is not something that must be solved, but a place in which we may quietly rest. Biology and longevity, biology mysteries. And when the mind has grown familiar with looking inward, when dreams, memories, and emotions settle like the surface of a lake after a gentle wind, another question appears, very close, yet deeply rooted. No longer about how we think or feel, but about how we change through time. The body, like everything else in the universe, does not remain still. It grows, matures, and gradually slows. Somewhere between familiar breaths, this process unfolds so quietly that we rarely notice it. Each day, billions of cells within the body are born and disappear. Skin renews itself, blood continues its circulation, small injuries are repaired without our awareness. In youth, this process moves quickly and almost perfectly, like a garden constantly tended by careful hands. But as years pass, that balance begins to change. Small signs appear first, a strand of gray hair, a morning that takes longer to feel fully awake. Not because the body suddenly weakens, but because its systems of repair begin to slow, like craftsmen growing tired after a long journey. There are many ideas about why this happens. Each time a cell divides, the protective ends of chromosomes grow slightly shorter, like the frayed ends of a rope worn down by time. The molecules that provide energy for life also leave behind small traces of damage as a quiet consequence of their work. Over many years, these marks accumulate. Not a single great mistake, but countless tiny changes, like dust settling upon a window through passing seasons. Yet, if aging were inevitable, in only one way, why does nature tell so many different stories? Some organisms seem not to follow the familiar rhythm at all. A small jellyfish can return to a younger state when threatened, as though time for it is not a one-way path. Tortoises and certain fish live for centuries while aging very slowly. In cold oceans, the Greenland shark swims across generations, its body enduring through centuries almost unchanged. These creatures do not resist time through force, but through patience. They repair DNA more effectively. They use energy more slowly. Each species appears to keep its own secret, like clocks built according to different principles. Even within the human body, there are quiet signs of renewal that we rarely notice. Skin heals after a cut. The liver can restore much of its mass after injury. The fingertip of a young child may sometimes regrow under certain conditions. These moments suggest that deeper regenerative abilities may still exist somewhere within our genes, simply no longer used in the ways other species employ them. In salamanders or starfish, when part of the body is lost, cells near the wound seem to forget what they once were. They return to a more flexible state, resembling embryonic cells, and begin rebuilding the body anew. This process is not yet fully understood. Why nature allows such renewal in some species, but not in all, may be the result of different evolutionary paths and their quiet costs. Other mysteries lie in extraordinary endurance. Some creatures can become almost completely frozen. The heart stops beating. Blood hardens into crystals. Yet when spring arrives, they thaw and continue living as though waking from a long sleep. They produce special molecules that protect cells from damage caused by ice. Brain and heart wait silently through many months. The thought carries a gentle comfort. Life does not always require constant motion. Sometimes it simply pauses, holding itself in stillness until the right conditions return. Another mystery appears in how certain large animals avoid illnesses that humans often fear. By simple logic, larger bodies living longer should face greater risks of cellular errors. Yet elephants or whales, with billions of cells and long lifespans, rarely develop cancer. They seem to carry additional layers of genetic protection, mechanisms that detect mistakes more quickly and repair them more effectively. It reminds us that death and decline are not always simple outcomes. Nature experiments with many ways of existing. Some species live quickly and disappear. Others move slowly and endure for centuries. There is no single path. For human beings, average lifespan has changed greatly through medicine, nutrition, and safer environments. Yet the ultimate limit remains uncertain. Some people live beyond 100 years with clear minds. Very few travel much farther. Perhaps the body reaches a threshold where repair can no longer keep pace with wear. Or perhaps we have simply not yet understood enough to move beyond it. And then a deeper question appears. Light as breath. Why does life end at all? Is death a failure of the system or part of a larger cycle? In forests, fallen leaves nourish the soil for the next season. In oceans, smaller creatures disappear so the chain of life may continue. Change and continuation seem always to arrive together. Even now, within your body, millions of cells have completed their lives so that others may appear. No sound announces it. No farewell is spoken. Only a quiet passing of roles, like waves taking turns touching the shore. Perhaps life is not a struggle against time, but a way for time to experience itself through finite forms. A candle burns not because it fails to keep its wax, but because its light is created through that process. And when seen this way, aging carries a different tone, no longer something to fear, but a long journey of matter learning to become memory. The body changes, yet the story it carries continues outward, in others, in what we create, in small influences that cannot easily be seen. If your eyelids feel a little heavier now, that too is natural. The body knows how to rest, just as winter knows how to follow autumn. There is no need to understand every secret of age or longevity. It is enough simply to be here, within this quiet moment, allowing the breath to slow and letting life, fragile yet enduring, continue to pass through you, like a gentle current of time. Instinct, culture, and humanity, human civilization. And when we reflect on life's length or brevity, on the way the body moves quietly through the years, we begin to notice that human beings have never truly existed alone. No one grows old in emptiness. No one grows up without being surrounded by other footsteps, other voices, other stories that began long before we were born. Perhaps that is why, from the earliest times, humans have always moved. Not only for food or climate, but seemingly because of a call more difficult to explain. Small groups left familiar valleys, crossed deserts, passed over glaciers, and followed the edges of seas. There were no maps and no compasses, only the sky above and a quiet feeling that something still waited ahead. That instinct remains within us today. A desire to go farther, to see a new horizon, even if sometimes it means only choosing a different familiar road on the way home. Along with those footsteps, sound began to change. At first, it may have been simple calls carried between wind and fire, signals to warn or to share food. Gradually, sound became something more. It carried memory. It carried ideas. And then it became language. No one knows exactly when the first human spoke a complete sentence. Perhaps it was a reminder of where water could be found. Perhaps a description of an animal passing nearby? Or perhaps the first story told beside a fire, as shadows moved across stone walls. Language allowed us to speak of things not present before our eyes. Tomorrow, hope, longing. It turned thought into a bridge connecting one mind to another. Yet even before words, humans understood one another through laughter. A child laughs before learning to speak. Groups laugh together when danger has passed. Laughter may once have been a signal that everything was safe, that darkness no longer threatened, that shoulders could loosen and vigilance could soften for a few rare moments. Strangely, laughter does not always require a clear reason. It appears in joy, in awkwardness, even in moments of deep tension. As though the body knows how to release pressure through another kind of breath, a lighter one. Somewhere close to laughter is music. A rhythm tapped upon a tree trunk. A wordless song carried through a long night. No one is certain why patterned sound reaches human beings so deeply. A melody can quicken the heartbeat or slow it as though guiding sleep. People who have lost memory may forget their own names, yet still remember an old song. Strangers may sing together and suddenly feel familiar to one another. Perhaps music once helped groups walk in rhythm during long journeys. Perhaps it soothed children into sleep. Or perhaps it is simply the way the brain finds order within a world filled with uncertainty. And then there is love, a quiet force, yet powerful enough to move beyond reason itself. Science can observe hormones and neural signals, but human experience stretches far beyond numbers. Love allows people to wait, to protect one another, to remember someone even when they are no longer nearby. In distant ages, love may have helped parents remain long enough to care for fragile human children. Yet over time, it became something larger. An unspoken promise that no one must walk through life entirely alone. And when emotion grows too full, human beings cry, not only from sorrow. People cry during reunion, in relief, in overwhelming happiness. No other species sheds tears in quite the same way. Those small drops accomplish what words sometimes cannot. They make feeling visible, allowing others to understand without explanation. Perhaps that is why stories have always appeared. In places separated by oceans, people still told of great floods, of gods in the sky, of journeys into the underworld and back again. The similarities are striking, as though human imagination grew from a shared source. Stories helped explain thunder, death, and the return of spring. Above all, they reminded communities that they belong to one another. Human beings cooperate in ways rarely seen elsewhere in nature. We help strangers, share food with those we have never met, build cities that no single person could complete alone. Perhaps it is a strategy for survival, or perhaps something deeper, a feeling that existence becomes lighter when shared. And yet, even the greatest cities do not last forever. Across history, civilizations once radiant have disappeared. Stone roads became covered with grass. Libraries turned to dust. Sometimes drought, war, or many small changes gathered slowly over years brought them to an end. Like the human body, societies seem to carry their own rhythms. They grow, reach a height, and then change. What is remarkable is that after each collapse, people begin again. They tell new stories, build again, learn again, as though beneath every upheaval there remains a quiet force drawing us forward. Perhaps that force is curiosity. A child asks, "Why?" hundreds of times each day. Adults look toward the sky and ask the same question. We study stars billions of light years away, even when such knowledge does not make dinner warmer or winter easier. Something within the mind wishes to understand the world simply because the world exists. And to share that understanding, we tell stories. From drawings on cave walls to books, from small screens to whispers before sleep, stories have always been there. They allow us to live many lives within one, to make mistakes without real consequence, to remember those who came before us. At this moment, you too are listening to a story, not to find a final answer, but to feel yourself within the long current of humanity. Beings who love, laugh, question, and tell. And perhaps that is what makes us human. Not intelligence or strength alone, but the ability to sit beside one another in darkness, share a small story, and feel the world grow a little gentler. If your eyes are beginning to grow heavy, allow that to happen. Stories have always been told at night, when the fire burns low and voices soften. There is no need to remember every detail. Simply let the sound pass through you, like the footsteps of ancestors moving slowly across time, quiet and at peace. Earth, the solar system, and the mystery of reality. Planetary plus ultimate physics. And as the story of humanity slowly settles, as laughter, tears, and the ancient voices once shared around firelight dissolve into the gentle darkness of night, we begin to notice that all of it unfolds upon a very small planet. A blue stone turning quietly around its star, carrying oceans, memories, and questions that have never truly ended. Beneath our feet, Earth is far from still. Deep below the calm surface, rivers of molten rock move slowly, almost beyond the reach of human time. Continents drift only centimeters each year, like immense rafts floating upon an invisible sea of fire. Mountains rise and slowly wear away. Oceans open and close. No one knows exactly why this planet began moving in such a way, why its crust fractured into great wandering plates for billions of years, while neighboring worlds remain nearly motionless, as though in deep sleep. At times, the planet reminds us that it is still alive. A mountain silent for centuries may suddenly awaken. Pressure gathered beneath the ground finds a path outward, carrying ash and red light into the sky. Though science has learned to listen for subtle tremors, there are moments when such change arrives almost without warning, like a heartbeat suddenly quickening after a dream. During powerful earthquakes, some have described the sky itself glowing. Green or violet lights flicker near the horizon, quiet as misplaced auroras. They have been recorded across centuries, yet no complete explanation exists. Much like the small luminous spheres sometimes seen during storms, drifting through rooms before fading without a trace. The light is neither hurried nor violent. It simply appears, as though reminding us that nature still keeps its own secrets. Water, the most familiar substance of all, carries an ancient question as well. Oceans cover most of the planet, yet where did they come from? Perhaps from icy bodies falling during the chaotic youth of the solar system. Perhaps from deep within Earth itself, released slowly as vapor across millions of years. Every drop of water you drink may once have passed through ancient volcanoes or rested within clouds long before human beings existed. Even our nearest companion in the sky remains partly unknown. The moon always turns one face toward us, as though keeping the other half for itself. When spacecraft first saw that distant side, they discovered a world entirely different. Rougher, older, almost without the familiar dark plains we recognize. Why two halves of the same body differ so greatly remains an unfinished question. Deeper still, beyond any human reach, Earth's core turns in darkness, Flowing metal creates an invisible magnetic shield, protecting the atmosphere from the solar wind. At times that shield weakens, and in distant ages it is even reversed completely. North became south, south became north. Such changes unfold slowly, witnessed by no one in full, like a long dream of the planet itself. As we move farther outward, the solar system reveals a quiet strangeness. Saturn carries rings as thin as dust made of light, perhaps destined to exist only briefly compared with the age of the planet. Uranus lies tilted almost completely on its side, circling the sun like a rolling sphere, and no one is certain what turned it so far. Venus rotates backward, so slowly that one day there lasts longer than its entire year. Farther away, storms continue to spiral across Neptune despite faint sunlight. On Jupiter, a vast red storm has endured longer than any human civilization, shrinking slowly yet refusing to disappear. These worlds follow their own rhythms, unhurried, unconcerned with whether anyone is watching. At the distant edge, where sunlight becomes only a faint memory, there may exist a vast cloud of icy debris, the birthplace of comets that visit our skies before departing again. No one has ever seen that region directly. We know it only through the travelers that occasionally return, like letters sent from a suburb never visited. Beneath the frozen shells of distant moons, oceans may move quietly in darkness. Water warmed by gravitational tides rises and falls endlessly. Perhaps there, within permanent night, simple forms of life continue unseen. Mars, once shaped by rivers and lakes, now holds only dry traces, like a memory left behind in a red desert. Yet when we look farther still, the question grows quieter. Why does mathematics, symbols imagined by human minds, describe so precisely the motion of planets and light? Why do abstract numbers fit reality as though they had always been there? The constants of nature, the speed of light or the charge of the electron, seem placed with delicate precision. Even a small change might prevent stars from forming or atoms from existing at all. We can measure them, yet we do not know why they are what they are. At a deeper level, the quantum world appears random. A particle may appear here or elsewhere without clear cause. Does true randomness exist, or is it only the boundary of our understanding? And mass, the weight you feel in your body resting now, arises from an invisible field only recently discovered. Perhaps space and time themselves possess smallest units, so small that no instrument can reach them, like pixels of reality, where familiar ideas dissolve into something else entirely. And then the final question returns, as gently as it first appeared. Can human beings ever understand everything? Perhaps not. Or perhaps not knowing is what allows the journey to continue. Every answer opens another quiet space. Every mystery is a door that does not need to be opened tonight. At this moment, the planet continues to turn. Stars continue to move. Questions remain without asking you to solve them before morning. You may let them rest there, drifting away like slow clouds across a dark sky. There is no need to hold on to them, no need to understand everything. Simply breathe a little more softly and rest within a universe vast enough and gentle enough to allow us not to know all things and still be at peace.